and it was barely inhabited with just a handful of colonists. It would be an ideal location to refuel if only it had a runway.
It was July 2nd, 1937, a warm morning somewhere over the Pacific Ocean. The world's most famous aviator, Amelia Earhart, had just radioed her last words. "We are on the line. We are running north and south." Moments later, silence. That was the last anyone ever heard from her. The plane vanished without a trace. No wreckage, no bodies, no answers. For nearly 9 decades, her disappearance has haunted the world like a ghost story written in the clouds. How could one of the most accomplished pilots in history, a woman who defied every expectation, simply disappear? Some say her plane crashed into the ocean, swallowed by the vast blue abyss. Others insist she was captured by the Japanese, a prisoner of war hidden away until her final breath. Still others whisper of secret spy missions, government cover-ups, and coded radio messages that hinted she may have survived for years under another name. To this day, the mystery remains one of history's greatest unsolved puzzles. Every decade brings new evidence, new photographs, and new theories, but no undeniable truth. So, what really happened that day? Was Amelia Earhart's final flight a tragic accident? Or something far darker, buried beneath decades of lies and secrecy? Long before she became a legend, Amelia Earhart was just a young woman with her eyes fixed on the open sky. Born in 1897 in Atchison, Kansas, she wasn't supposed to dream the way she did, not in a world where women were expected to stay grounded. But Amelia was never one to follow rules. From the first time she saw an airplane at a county fair, something inside her changed. "It was as though I'd touched the future," she once said. That single moment ignited a fire that would lead her to rewrite history. By her 30s, Amelia had become a global icon, a symbol of courage and independence. She wasn't just flying planes. She was breaking barriers. In 1932, she became the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean, earning worldwide fame. Her charm, intelligence, and quiet strength made her more than a pilot. She was a hero in a time that desperately needed one. But Amelia's ambition didn't stop at fame. She wanted to push the boundaries of human endurance, to prove that women were just as capable of greatness as men. Her next dream was the most daring of all, to become the first woman to fly around the world. In 1937, she began to prepare for the mission that would make, or break, her legacy. With her trusted navigator, Fred Noonan, by her side, Amelia planned an ambitious route that would span 29,000 miles and cross nearly every major ocean. The Lockheed Electra 10E, sleek, silver, and powerful, was her chosen vessel. It was fitted with the most advanced technology of the day, long-range radios, extra fuel tanks, and reinforced wings. But even then, flying across vast stretches of ocean was a perilous gamble. One miscalculation, one equipment failure, and there would be no second chance. Still, Amelia was determined. "Courage," she wrote in her journal, "is the price that life exacts for granting peace." The journey began in March 1937. But after a mechanical failure during an early attempt, the mission was delayed. In June, she tried again, this time flying eastward, chasing the sun. From Miami to South America, Africa to India, then through Southeast Asia, the world watched as Amelia's plane traced a shimmering line across the globe. By the time she reached Lae, New Guinea, on July 1st, 1937, she had completed about 22,000 miles. Only one leg remained, the most dangerous, crossing the vast Pacific Ocean to reach a tiny speck of land called Howland Island. Barely 2 miles wide. That's where things began to unravel. Radio transmissions between Amelia's plane and the U.S. Coast Guard vessel Itasca, stationed near Howland Island, were filled with confusion. Her signals were faint, her coordinates uncertain. The Itasca could hear her, but she couldn't hear them. Somewhere over the endless blue, Amelia's navigation system began to fail. At 8:43 a.m. on July 2nd, her final transmission came through. "We are on the line. We are running north and south." Then, nothing. The silence that followed marked the beginning of one of history's greatest mysteries. Within hours, a massive search effort was launched, the largest of its kind at the time. Planes, ships, and crews scoured the ocean for days. Not a trace was found. The world was stunned. How could one of the most famous women alive, with all the resources of the U.S. government, simply vanish into the sky? Newspapers around the world carried the same haunting headline. Amelia Earhart missing. What began as a triumph of human spirit suddenly turned into a chilling mystery that would grip the world for generations to come. When Amelia Earhart's final radio message went silent, the world froze. The sky over the Pacific had swallowed one of its brightest stars, and nobody knew where she had gone. What began as an ambitious flight quickly became the most extensive search and rescue operation in history up to that point. Within hours of losing contact, the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Itasca began scanning the horizon near Howland Island, the remote coral atoll Amelia was supposed to reach. The weather had turned unpredictable, visibility was poor, and the Pacific stretched endlessly in every direction. Even with all its equipment, the Itasca was helpless. It was as if the Lockheed Electra had simply evaporated into thin air. President Franklin D. Roosevelt immediately ordered a full-scale search. Over 66 aircraft and 9 ships were deployed across 250,000 square miles of open ocean. The U.S. Navy aircraft carrier USS Lexington joined the mission, combing the waters for weeks at enormous cost. Pilots risked their own lives flying over treacherous seas, scanning for even the faintest glint of metal or a floating life raft. But day after day, they found nothing. Newspapers printed hour-by-hour updates. Radio hosts whispered theories late into the night. People around the world clung to hope, refusing to believe that the fearless Amelia could be gone. But hope was fading fast. Then came the first strange reports, mysterious distress signals picked up by amateur radio operators across the Pacific. Some claimed they heard a faint female voice calling for help. "We are down," one operator transcribed. Another claimed the voice said, "We can't last much longer." Were these real transmissions from Amelia's plane, or cruel coincidences created by the ocean's static? No one could say for sure, but for days, these ghostly signals fueled hope and heartbreak. As the official search dragged on, the clock was ticking. The Pacific was unforgiving. Fuel would have long run out. If they had crashed at sea, the Electra would have sunk within minutes. By mid-July 1937, after nearly 2 weeks of searching, the U.S. government made a painful announcement. The search for Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan was being called off. The world mourned. Newspapers from London to Tokyo printed her photograph, smiling in her flight jacket, beneath headlines like, "A heroine lost to the sky." For many, it was unthinkable that the woman who had conquered the Atlantic could meet such an uncertain end. But even in tragedy, the mystery refused to die. In the years that followed, theories began to emerge. Some believed Amelia's plane had simply run out of fuel and crashed into the Pacific, sinking into the deep ocean floor, never to be found. Others suggested she might have managed a forced landing on an uncharted island, surviving for a time before succumbing to the elements. One island in particular caught investigators' attention, Nikumaroro, formerly Gardner Island, part of the Phoenix Islands, about 350 miles south of Howland. Sailors passing by in later years reported signs of possible human activity, remnants of a campfire, pieces of aluminum, and even women's shoes. Could Amelia have made it there? Could she and Noonan have survived, waiting desperately for a rescue that never came? The mystery began to consume historians, pilots, and ordinary dreamers alike. It wasn't just about one woman anymore. It was about a legend trapped between the sky and the sea. Still, no wreckage was ever confirmed. No definitive evidence ever surfaced. All that remained were her words, echoing across time. Adventure is worthwhile in itself. Even as the world grieved, Amelia's disappearance became something larger, a reflection of human ambition, courage, and the high cost of chasing the impossible. But behind the public grief, whispers of something darker began to grow. Some began to wonder, what if Amelia didn't just crash? What if her disappearance wasn't an accident at all? As the years passed, Amelia Earhart's disappearance began to drift from tragedy into legend, and with legend came conspiracy. While the official story claimed she ran out of fuel and crashed into the Pacific, others whispered that the truth had been buried, hidden beneath layers of government secrecy and wartime politics. It all started with a question no one could answer. Why would one of the most famous women in the world simply vanish without a trace? Not a single confirmed piece of her plane ever found. Some historians began to suspect there was more to Amelia's final flight than the public had been told. In the tense political atmosphere of the 1930s, with the Pacific Ocean on the brink of World War II, certain corners of the media began speculating that Amelia's around-the-world journey might have been more than a record attempt. The theory suggested that Amelia was secretly working for the U.S. government, gathering reconnaissance, photographs of Japanese-controlled islands in the Pacific under the guise of her flight. The idea sounded outlandish, yet it gained traction because of one crucial fact. Her last known route placed her dangerously close to Japanese military zones, particularly the Marshall Islands, which were off-limits to foreigners. Eyewitnesses from the Marshall Islands later claimed they had seen a silver airplane crash near the shore in 1937. Some even said a tall woman and a man, matching Amelia and Fred Noonan's description, were taken into Japanese custody. According to these accounts, Amelia might not have died at sea but had been captured and imprisoned, possibly suspected of espionage. Decades later, American soldiers stationed in the Pacific during World War II added more fuel to the fire. Some swore they'd heard rumors that a female pilot had been held on the island of Saipan, one of Japan's major bases, and had died there under mysterious circumstances. Still, there was no hard proof. No records, no photographs, only stories passed between locals, veterans, and historians. But every few years, new pieces of evidence would emerge: faded photos, scraps of metal, human remains that might, or might not, belong to Amelia. Each discovery reignited the debate. In 2017, one such photograph resurfaced from the U.S. National Archives, showing a group of people at a harbor in the Marshall Islands, including what some believed were Amelia and Fred sitting on a dock, alive after their disappearance. For a moment, it seemed like the mystery might finally be solved, but forensic experts quickly disputed the image, saying it could not be verified. The world was once again left divided between believers and skeptics. Then came another shocking theory, one that placed Amelia not in Japanese hands, but back in America, alive and under a new identity. This controversial claim suggested she had survived the crash and returned home secretly, living the rest of her life as Irene Bolam, a banker from New Jersey who bore a striking resemblance to Earhart. The woman denied it vehemently until her death in 1982, but the theory never fully died. Each of these possibilities, and crash at sea, island survival, capture, or secret return, spoke to something deeper than evidence. They reflected the world's refusal to accept that a woman so bold, so fearless, could simply vanish into the clouds. For decades, explorers, scientists, and historians continued to chase her shadow across the Pacific. Expeditions to Nikumaroro Island uncovered partial skeletons, fragments of aluminum, and 1930s-era glass bottles. Some argued these were Amelia's remains. Others dismissed them as coincidence. DNA testing brought no definitive answers. Through it all, Amelia's legend grew stronger, not weaker. She became a symbol of mystery and perseverance, an enigma that defied even the passage of time. But behind the fascination, one haunting truth remained. No matter which theory you believe, something extraordinary happened in those final hours of flight. And if Amelia did survive, if she truly endured after the world gave her up for dead, then her courage was greater than anyone could have imagined. Decades after Amelia Earhart's mysterious disappearance, her story remains one of the greatest unsolved puzzles in human history. But even without definitive answers, her legacy continues to soar higher than any aircraft she ever piloted. In the end, The question of what happened to her may matter less than what she stood for. Courage, determination, and the unrelenting human spirit to explore the unknown. In the years following her vanishing, countless tributes poured in from every corner of the world. Schools, airports, and scholarships were named in her honor. Her husband, George Putnam, a publisher and promoter who had been her greatest supporter, refused to let her memory fade. He published her letters and journals, preserving the voice of a woman who defied expectations and lived fearlessly. Amelia wasn't just a pilot. She was a pioneer in every sense. At a time when women were discouraged from stepping beyond domestic roles, she became an icon of independence and resilience. Her quiet confidence inspired millions of women to believe that they, too, could chase impossible dreams. "Never interrupt someone doing what you said couldn't be done," she once wrote, a line that became her life's motto. Generations later, that same spirit still burns bright. Every new discovery, every expedition searching for traces of her plane, reignites the hope that maybe, one day, we'll finally know the truth. Scientists, oceanographers, and historians have poured decades of research and millions of dollars into unraveling the mystery. The National Geographic Society, the International Group for Historic Aircraft Recovery, TIGAR, and even independent adventurers have led missions to the Pacific, scanning the seabed with sonar and drones. In 2019, researchers using deep-sea mapping technology believed they had detected unusual metallic debris at the bottom of the ocean near Nikumaroro. Hopes soared that this could finally be the wreck of Amelia's Lockheed Electra, resting silently beneath the waves. Yet once again, no conclusive proof emerged. The ocean, vast and secretive, guarded its mysteries well. Still, the fascination never died, because Amelia's story is more than a search for wreckage. It's a reflection of humanity's endless hunger to explore. In her own words, "The most difficult thing is the decision to act. The rest is merely tenacity." She acted when the world told her not to. She took to the skies when few believed women could even belong there. Even in her disappearance, Amelia forced the world to look up, to question limits, to embrace risk, and to value courage over comfort. Her vanishing became a mythic echo of that daring spirit. She wasn't simply lost. She became part of the sky itself, forever out of reach, forever inspiring. Modern filmmakers, authors, and artists continue to resurrect her story. From Hollywood dramatizations to historical documentaries, Amelia Earhart remains a cultural touchstone, a reminder of how far ambition can take us, and how much mystery can still lie at the edge of discovery. But for those who knew her, those who read her words, her letters, her quiet reflections, the most haunting truth is this: Amelia never sought fame or immortality. She sought purpose. "Please know," she wrote to her husband before her final flight, "I am quite aware of the hazards. But I want to do it because I want to do it." Women must try to do things as men have tried. When they fail, their failure must be a challenge to others. Those words are perhaps her real legacy. Because whether she lies beneath the waves of the Pacific or rests somewhere unmarked on a forgotten island, Amelia Earhart's spirit didn't vanish that July morning in 1937. It took flight, soaring far beyond the limits of geography or time. She remains, to this day, the woman who refused to be grounded, the aviator who disappeared but never truly left us. And maybe that's the truth the world has been searching for all along. Amelia Earhart was never lost. She simply became one with the sky,